know you are.
Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's meeting, we have the consideration of our consent agenda items, including the regular meeting minutes of April 23rd and claims. Does anybody have any questions regarding those?
There are no additions or corrections for approval of the consent agenda items approval.
Okay, anybody second?
Second.
Thank you, Tammy. And all in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Okay, thank you. That motion is carried then. And Mr. Swope, you have your staff report.
Okay, we have 3 resignations tonight. We have from South Grove, Kathy Rodriguez, 4th grade teacher. Middle school, Christy Anderson, social studies teacher. And those 2, Kathy and Christy, both have been on leave this year, but maternity leave, but have decided not to come back. In the high school, Stephanie Schroeder, English Spanish teacher. And then for employment, we recommend Christy Bayless, 2nd grade teacher, to go from a temporary to a permanent contract at Central grade 2. She will be taking over Deidre Dunstra's position, who was on leave and then has moved out of state. At the high school, we recommend Kristen Houghton to be English teacher. She's a recent Ball State graduate. She also will be our girls cross country and track coach. So she was come highly recommended by Mr. Warner. And we have another recommendation. We'll have Mr. Warner introduce our athletic director.
I'd like to introduce you Mr. Kevin Stevenson. Kevin was one of 27 applicants, and he went through a rigorous screening process and a committee of the school board member, the superintendent, the high school principal, high school assistant principal, the middle school athletic director, and the middle school principal, and we all were, this was consensus #1 pick. He's going to do a great job. He's got a lot of experience in the field. We're looking forward to him stepping in and taking us to a new level in athletics.
So that completes my staff report.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve Mr. Swope's staff report?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay. Janice? Okay, thank you so much. And all those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Great. Welcome, Kevin. We really are glad to have you here. So welcome to Beech Grove.
May I say something?
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Yes, I also would like to welcome you this evening and to our school corporation. It's a little bit unusual. It's not unusual to have received so many positive recommendations on an employee during the application and interview process when you're working toward a final recommendation. But it is unusual to receive so many unsolicited after the decision was made on who you're going to recommend from other people who had heard about who we were going to recommend, continue to call and say what a good move this is for Beech Grove and how lucky we are. So we are we feel very fortunate to have you on staff. Officially welcome you. We can take care of those other details later. And we have a big job here for you to do.
I'm ready to go.
Okay, great.
Great.
Dr. Sir,
Yeah.
the way I understand it, all of the qualified applicants, they were all qualified, which shows, you know, the rigorous selection process that we went through and how outstanding of a position he may be doing a job for us there. So again, I want to welcome you as well. So that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going on to our new business. And Mr. Sloat, you have something about the Indiana Bond Bank.
Right. You remember back in January, we borrowed money from the Indiana Bond Bank for cash flow purposes because we do not receive our property tax proceeds normally until May and June. So that took care of that part of the year. However, as you know, you've not received your tax statements, and trending reassessment is not entirely complete. So we've been notified that our taxes will not be received possibly until, well, we don't really know. So when I put together a new cash flow. I put down the worst case scenario, December, because you really don't have an opportunity to go back to the bond bank, you know, if we were into a position where we were short of cash. So we're doing another tax anticipation warrant based on collection of property tax revenues. And the amounts that you see on the second page of the resolution, like I said, general fund 3 million, those are not the amounts we're going to borrow. Those amounts listed by each fund are the maximum, is the tax levy. And at the time we processed this, the state had not verified our cash flow to give us the amount we're going to borrow. So I can give you those new numbers if you'd like, because they're not nearly that high. For the general fund, we'll borrow $714,833. Transportation fund, $151,611. Debt service fund, $437,638. Capital projects, $343,939. And bus replacement, $2,988. And pension debt service fund, $146,675. So that totals $1,797,684. Now, the good thing about this is if we would receive tax revenues sooner than anticipated, or we won't get them in June because taxes, we've had some early collection, but we won't have it all probably until later in the fall. When we get the money in, then we pay back within 4 days, you know, this short-term borrowing. So that'll reduce our interest cost. And we did budget in the debt service fund the interest costs for, you know, the January borrowings and these borrowings. Now, just to compare, in January we borrowed $3,211,000, so that gives you an idea. You know, we were going to be okay, but now we're not under these conditions. So, with this resolution, we'd ask the board to approve. That would allow us to continue the proceedings with the bond bank to accept these funds. Our interest rate on the January borrowings was 3.68%. You know, we don't know what the rate will be, but I assume it'll be close to that this time.
Does anybody have any questions?
3.68%.
Right.
Yes, Jeff.
I move for approval of the resolution as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? All right. Thank you
Okay, thank you.
for the resolution. And Mr. Collins, textbook adoption.
Yes, the state of Indiana requires that you accept our recommendation for textbooks. We're on a 6-year cycle. That means all books are reviewed within 6 years. This year was reading and handwriting, which will then be purchased this year to be used for next year. The process we go through is that every teacher evaluates the book. Because we're a small school district, we don't have a committee do it. Every teacher looks at it. And we do it at the building levels. And then those are presented to me. And then we have parents come in and review the books to make sure there's no objection materials. I do have in the new business a list of all the books. They are all on the state adoption list. There is one that's a continuing list, which is the handwriting for the million, but that's allowable. They'll all be new books. We were very pleased this year that the middle school has decided to adopt reading, which is more of a language arts approach rather than just a literature approach, because our emphasis really has been on reading because that was a lower area in the past. We made great strides this year in reading, so I was very pleased with that. So I'd like to recommend to you that you accept this list of books for next year.
Anybody have any questions?
I move that we approve the textbook adoption.
Thank you, Tammy. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you.
I'd like to also draw your attention to the other handout that we sent along to you with textbook rental, listing the textbook rental and fees prices for next year compared to this year, and it's somewhat unusual to see that rental prices would actually go down when we're adopting new books. But that's not a typo, that's accurate. Kit, could you inform the board what happened that caused that to change?
We're going from a language arts type approach, which is books that include spelling, include all the different things, we only need one book instead of having a different book for all the different subjects. So that, in reality, made the prices go down, because one book that has all three things in it correlated together rather than choosing different ones.
Now, that's good news if you're a parent of a 2nd through 8th grader, but if you're a parent of a or 1st grade student next year, it did go up, and the reason for that?
They really don't have spelling books, but they have a whole lot of different reading books, because if you've ever had a kindergarten or 1st grader, they have all these little books, and just the inflation and the price of books made that go up. So where we compensated at the upper level because we could condense it down to one book, we still have all these little books at the lower level, and just the price of materials and things like that made it go up.
The reading adoption year is usually the worst year in terms of jumps in textbook rental prices, and so unfortunately there will be a jump in K-1, but the good news is it's decreased in all the others. So that's unusual, very unusual, and something that I thought you would want to know why that went down.
And we'll enjoy that this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably won't happen again.
Great. Okay, Mr. Collins, you also have something about federal grants you'd like to
Yes,
say?
I write the federal grants during the summertime, and usually around Thanksgiving too. And all the grants require that you give me permission to apply for a federal grant. We have Title I, which we use for children who are struggling, to give them additional help and try to bring them up. It's based on free and reduced lunches, the amount of money that we get. We have Title II, which we use for class size reduction to make the classes smaller. We have Title IV, which is for drug-free. That is getting smaller and smaller and probably will disappear before long. And then Title V, which we use for NWA testing. And then also a state grant, not a federal grant, is a GT grant, which will go up next year considerably, not this year, but next year. But I do need official permission for me to apply for these grants, and it's several thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Any questions?
I move that we grant permission to apply for the grants.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Tammy. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, thank you. You have your authorization. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Wagner, the 2007-2008 Student Code of Conduct.
Last month I told you that we met with the principals to review our current student code of conduct. And at that time, all the principals felt that there wasn't any revisions or changes. So for the meeting tonight, I'd like to recommend that we re-adopt that student code of conduct for the school year 2007-2008.
I move that we adopt the current rules.
Thank you, Rick. And a second. You second that? Sure. Okay, thanks very much. And all
Thank
those in
you.
favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Great. They're all approved. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. And now we have our reports, and Mr. Collins, you have a presentation on our data warehouse capabilities.
Yes, and what I have at your desk is a handout. I had two choices when I did this. I could give you a PowerPoint presentation, which is basically what it is, or we could actually go live onto the data warehouse. And I just thought you might enjoy seeing it live rather than just a canned PowerPoint. But if you switch back and forth, this is the PowerPoint that I'm going to refer to, and there's some information on here that I'll say page 1, page 2, that type of thing. We can't bring them both up at the same time. It's kind of clumsy and it's not very impressive really when you switch back and forth. So we'll be going actually onto the data warehouse. This is live information. It's updated daily. Whatever was put on today will not be there, but what was put on Friday is there, so it was updated every night, so it's that recent. You're also going to see some information that is not on here because NWA winter testing is over with and it's on. So between the time I made this and now, we have more information, and I'll kind of refer to that. The data warehouse was designed by B2S and us. It is the only system in the world like it because we developed it ourselves. Phil Boucher is here from B2S, and you want to introduce your work?
This is Andrew Wagner. He works at B2S Consulting here in Minneapolis.
And Philip meets with me almost weekly to make sure everything's running correctly, and if we see any glitches or things that don't work right, we try to change it. What we're going to look at is how a teacher in a school would use this information in order to help kids. There's a lot more on here, so I'm just going to highlight a few places for you so you get a feel for it, but you won't see everything there possibly is. It is an internal system, so you can only get into the system from inside the school. So it is not an external system. So we had to do it here. If you go home and try to get into it, you won't be able to. The very first page tells you the philosophy of what we're going to go through. In order to help kids and look at a school, what we're going to first do of all is we have to get data. We have really three sources of data that we look at. One is I-STEP scores, which come in the fall, but we don't get it until around Christmas time. NWA, which we usually give 3 times a year, so you'll see information of NWA scores 3 times a year. And then teacher information, which usually is reflected into grades. So those are the 3 sources of data that we'll look at. If they all point in the same direction, then we probably have a pretty good idea that we're on the right track. So first of all, we're going to look at fall data. There will be spring and winter, so I'll be pointing out just fall, but other will be there. Next, we want to analyze we want to analyze the assessment data, look at it, try to make any sense out of it we can. Then we're going to diagnose what our weak areas are. So we'll go through this process. After we diagnose it, we will match instructional materials to counteract this weakness, to make it a strength, or at least bring it up. And then we'll reevaluate to see if we did it or not. So this is the process that we'll be going through. So let's look and see what the data warehouse looks like. Again, for people at home, there's no way you can get into this. So don't even try. The very page 2 looks like what it looks like when you come to it. And so this is the very first page. It's just kind of an introductory page. And of course, every teacher has a login. Now, since I'm a central office administrator, I have access to all the schools. Because the teacher just has access to their own room. They don't have everybody else's data. But I have
their classroom?
just their classroom.
Okay.
Now, if it's a team, we do have designed so that a team could look at team information. But you can't go and look at high school if you're from Central or someplace like that. You can only look at the kids that you're directly responsible for. And when you see welcome, you know you're in. Okay, let's look at page 3. What we're going to look at, and we're going to follow that same procedure we did on the very first page. We're going to look at grade level data, then we're going to go down and look at classroom data, and then we're going to end up looking at student data. So we'll see if we can interpret those 3 different types of data. So let's look at page 4. I said one source of data we want to look at is I-STEP. So let's look at I-STEP. I did try to select a school that's kind of in the middle, so I selected South Grove just at random, and there's a classroom that I will use at random, and there's a student I will use at random. Just kind of example type things. So let's look at what South Grove, as far as I-STEP is concerned with. So and you notice that I have access to all schools. I want to go down to as low a level as we possibly can when we look at data, so I'm going to drill down to the standard level. Most parents just get whether they pass or fail. Now we're going to look at the various Indiana standards. And what I thought we would do, since we just got finished with reading, is that we kind of key in on reading. It's usually divided into 3 areas: language arts, which is your English part, reading, and math. But since we looked a little bit at the reading, we're going to look at reading. So this is the I-STEP information by standard. The state of Indiana has 3 standards in reading. One is vocabulary, one is reading comprehension, and one is literal response. If we look at those 3, this is our first source of data. We try to find out what our weakest area is,
And here we see that reading comprehension from the I-step level is our weakest. If I go to each grade, and I can't go to each grade, it comes out about the same. So I-step is pointing at this time that reading comprehension might be a weakness. Okay, let's turn the next page. This is page 5. The next thing we want to do is we want to look at NWA data, see if it will reinforce or give us some more information about it.
I got a question. When you had the cursor on the reading comprehension there at 5.1%, and it showed two different percentages,
One gives the state, one gives ours.
so weird. I mean,
We were at
despite
81.
the fact, I just want people at home to realize that despite the fact you're saying that's our weakest on this board, we're still above the state.
Yeah, we don't want to compare ourselves to the state because
Right.
we do better than the
Exactly.
state. So, yeah, the state had a 76.4% mastery, we had an 81.5.
Right.
So, yeah, we do very well compared to the state.
Right.
But that is our weakest area.
No matter how good we are, we keep trying to be better. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we still got to get up to that 90% thing that you gave us. Okay, what I'm going to do now is look at NWA. I can't change the years, so if I want to go back years, I can also, but I won't. We said that we want to look at South Grove, we want to look at reading. So here we have, for NWA, the various scores. I'm going to pull it over just a little bit. And we want to look to see up here which are our lowest areas. Now, NWA has informational comprehension and has little comprehension. So NWA divides it into two, where the I-step only had reading comprehension. So we want to look in those two areas. And if we look at 5th grade, right here in fall, 208, 210. This telling us that in the comprehension area, which I-step we had said we were weakest in, it is the informational side that we're a little weaker than we are the literal. So we want to look at, we think, informational text. Also, this tells me here that we didn't grow any between fall and winter. So that also gives me an indication where over here we grew too. So I can see that reading comprehension is an area I want to look at, and I think I probably would want to look more at informational text than I do literal. Information will be studying journals and things like that rather than reading stories. This usually wasn't on here. Look what we did eventually after the teachers started working on it. We went to a 212, so we got some good growth there. But that's ahead of the game. That's the evaluation of the last part of the game. Okay, let's look at page 6. If we take the I-step information and we take the NWA information, what it's telling me for South Grove, and I'm kind of keying in on 5th grade, I-step told us that reading comprehension was low. Then we went to NWA and they said look more at informational text, not the literal text. So that was kind of the diagnosis of what we saw at that level. Now we're going to go down to the next level, which is the classroom level, because each classroom is a little different, and maybe the classroom doesn't agree with what the grade is doing. So let's pick a classroom at South Grove and see what we can find about that classroom. So let's look at page 8. And we're going to choose South Grove. And I'm going to now choose a room. Since I was doing with 5th grade, I'm going to choose a 5th grade room. And let's look at the English I-step scores. And we're going to then submit the report. This tells all the kids, and I'm going to zoom over here so we really don't look at the kids, how they did on each of the standards on I-step, and red means we have a problem. So now we can see who, and some of them have problems all across the board, or someone just has a little problem in that area that will help us to key in on which one it is. Then we come down here, these are all the kids together that we need to work with, the ones who really are having problems. If we look at reading comprehension, this tells me that there are 8 kids in this classroom who did not pass the I-step in reading comprehension. That's 33.3% of the room. So if we're going to look at informational text and we're going to look at reading comprehension, there are 8 kids we need to look at and to help in order for them to pass the I-step, and there they are. Okay, let's look at page 9.
let's see if we can get some more information about those 8 kids. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up these 8 kids out of this one classroom. So I'm going to go to South Grove. I'm going to pick the teacher that I arbitrarily selected. I'm going to look at the reading scores. I did find out that these kids scored on NWA a 201 or less, so I'm going to put a 201. I can put any score in there I want to, but I want to find those 8 kids, and I know they scored a 201 or less. I want to go fall to spring. What I could do if I wanted to is I could analyze even to see if gender was a factor, to see if ethnic background was a factor, see if social economic was a factor, see if they don't speak English or not, or whether they're in special ed or not. I'm not going to go through all that, but I could. Oh, also if I want to see if they're absent a lot, I could throw that in there too. Just as one classroom of kids. And what I have here now is how they did on their NWA scores. This is, and also what kind of growth. Originally when I did this, I did not have the spring scores, but now they figured out the growth, and we can see whether they have appropriate growth or not. I'm going to go down here, and what we see here is fall informational text is what we want it to be in, and here, let me pull over, 5th grade, right in here, you'll notice that we have, what I'm really going to do is key in on one kid. Let's pick this kid right here. This student was scored a 178 in informational text. You notice compared to the other scores, very low score. So we're going to key in informational text with that one student. I could find all those factors if I want to go back and see what this type of thing is. So if we look at page 10 for the classroom, reading, again, and reinforced on I-STEP that reading comprehension was a weakness, and we also can see that informational text through NWA was also a weakness for the classroom. We've narrowed it down to 8 kids, and I'm picked one kid, one of the 8, to see if we can help that kid. So let's look at page 11, shows that we're going to go down to the student level. This gets a little tricky, so I'm going to pull over because this is live information. And so I picked the kid. These are all the kids in this class that I picked. I'll show you the various types of information that I got on them. And what we're going to do is pick this student right here. This person did not pass the I-STEP. Had a 188, 189. When we took it, this is the informational text that we were keying in on. As I said, this was not here when I first started. The child now has a 202, which we got 14 gain from this kid in informational text. I'm way ahead of myself because that's the evaluation part. But this is what I would normally just see is this child, it's one of their lowest scores. We're going to key in on it, and I'm jumping ahead on myself. We were very successful because we got 14 growth for this student. This is pretty much what this page 12 is telling me. Now we're going to go actually into this one student's records and try to see if we can figure out what's going on with this one student. Again, if I was a South Grove teacher, those schools would not appear. It would just automatically pop to South Grove. I'm selecting a student in this class that I selected. There's all the kids in this class. I've already arbitrarily chose a child. And I have all different types of information I can get on this person. over here, that you notice that they did not pass the I-step. This is the overall scores. Now we're going to look at reading scores, and we're going to look at the reading comprehension scores. And here we have a 180, 187. You'll notice that we have a record of all the scores that this student has done over since they started taking the tests. So this tells me, yes, this student does have a problem with reading comprehension. Let's look at informational text here. 172 was in the 179. If we look across, in most of these areas, that's one of the lowest scores. So for this student, follows the same pattern we found for the grade, for the classroom. We're going to key in on informational text. So what we need, the third part is, let's see how the student did grade-wise, because that's the teacher's side of it. D in reading went up the next year, C minus. So yes, we can see that definitely, from a teacher's perspective, reading is a weakness. So now we have 3 sources of data pointing to the same thing: reading comprehension, information comprehension, and yes, reading is a problem. The next page is something we'll be working on. This has not been developed, something we're thinking about putting into the data warehouse. This is a parent report with NWA scores for this student, showing in the blue how they scored on the reading part of the test, then all of the different areas. The yellow part is where the child should be. So we can see informational text is definitely a weakness for this child. So this is a report we're going to try to generate with B2S that we can give to parents where they can see where the strengths and weaknesses that we've talked about. So we've looked at data, we've looked at raw data, we have analyzed it, we've diagnosed it. We want to look in this one area to help this student. Now let's see if we can take and prescribe instructional strategies, which is page 16.
The yellow section, is that our standard or is that state standard?
That's national.
Okay.
So if we were gonna develop this and give it to a parent, we would wait until the spring and do the following?
No, this would be a fall one where we could decide which key area. Now, many of our schools, the students are participating in this also, and they're setting goals
Right.
in the various areas and know where their weaknesses are and what they need to do in order. And what we want to do is try to bring the parents along so they can have instructional strategies that match all of these weak areas in an area where they can pull it out relatively easily and help bring the parent along. Yes, for each standard, yes. And that's what we're going to do now.
Okay.
We're going to look at instructional strategies. I'm leaving the kid. We've already diagnosed where we want to help the kid, so that's finished.